Hi, Stuart Courtney here, DJANGOBEAT-TV, sorry. I've got focal dystonia. Now, what is it and can it be cured? Focal dystonia is the reason I've not been playing. I've not been sort of like doing any videos or anything else, and you haven't heard from me. I made my video before about this, but it was all out of sync, so I'll try again. So first of all, what is focal dystonia? Focal dystonia is something that's in your brain, and it's misdiagnosed often as like carpal tunnel syndrome or something that's wrong with your hand. It can happen in either hand. It can happen with many musicians. It can happen in any part of the body, in fact. Focal hand dystonia, or musical dystonia as often called, only really affects musicians, and it's usually task specific, which means it only really affects you when you're trying to play the guitar or whatever it is that you did it. It's usually people who've practiced a hell of a lot, people who play complex music, difficult technical pieces of music with passages which are quite complex, like flamenco, like gypsy jazz, like classical music. Now, the symptoms are basically where you're trying to do something and maybe your finger will shoot over this way, or like will pull back, or it will straighten out like this, and you won't be able to control it. And it just messes up your playing. It's thought to be incurable. First of all, that isn't true, but I'll get to that. The other thing is there's no pain. So, for example, with carpal tunnel syndrome or Dupuytren's contracture or mallet finger or many different other things that you can possibly get, tendonitis, tendinosis, tenosynovitis, all these different bloody things you can get, there is always pain. But I had MRI scans, ultrasound scans, I had nerve conduction studies, I had all sorts of different things go on, looking at my vascular system and things like this. Nothing wrong with my hand. So it meant that it wasn't local. Now, focal dystonia isn't local, it's in the brain. So what you can think of is that in our brain, we have what's known as the cortical homunculus. Now, this is like a kind of map of the brain. A homunculus was in the Greek, I think it was Greek. It was thought to be a tiny, in proportion human being that becomes a person, like turns into a baby, then becomes a person. Now, to apply this, in our brain, on our somatosensory cortex, we have this mapped out what you call felt self. And the more stimulation a particular area of the brain, of the body has, the larger it is on the brain. And you can look this up. You've got strange pictures that you can see of this kind of dysmorphic figure representing with big lips, because, you know, we touch our lips quite a lot. We touch our face quite a lot. Our hands are massive on there. Now, the thing to note about this is that in brain scans of people without focal dystonia, the representations on the somatosensory cortex are completely distinct. They are separate. However, with people that have focal dystonia, they're not. They're slightly blurred. And sometimes they're slightly off to one side and grouped together more closely than they normally would. When people have had treatment that's worked, these representations move back to their natural state. But there are various ways this can be done. So first of all, that's what it was. That's what it is, focal dystonia. It's kind of maladapted reflexes that have been laid down. Some say it's even an effort of your brain to become ultra efficient based on the demands you've placed on it. So rather than moving one finger, it moves two, or something like this. It can be very depressing. I've been seriously depressed. I did a lot of crying. It was not, a pretty time for me when I realized, well, I didn't know what it was that I had. Now that I know, I'm more positive because I also know that it can be cured, and I've started some treatment. Now, before I tell you what that is, here are a number of different things that I looked into. First of all, there were lots of them. Let's start with the least invasive. The least invasive is known as sensory motor retraining. Now, this is where you're gently retaught to retrain your brain to use the hand the way that it used it before, or even better. And it can be done many ways. Usually it involves another technique known as constraint-induced movement therapy, which is the use of splints. Now, I have some. Here is a splint. My little finger and my ring finger are affected. Let's see if I can just show you quickly what that looks like. Okay, if I try to do a 3-note per string major scale, watch my fingers. Can you see that? My little finger locking out? It's very And my ring finger, can you see it's moving over and straightening? And my knuckle here is pointing out. This is because this muscle here is contracting. I don't want it to, but it is. Anyway, it means I can't play. So by putting these on and playing with the other two fingers, you're denying the muscles the option of obeying the maladaptive reflex in the brain. And you practice with these. And what happens is they fight. The fingers fight against the splints because they want to do it. Now the thing is, as the brain does look for efficient routes to do anything, energy efficient, eventually it realizes that something's in the way. By it using this energy, it's not getting what it wants. It's not creating movement. This is a very simple way of putting it. And so the thoughts are that it reverts back to a way where it's relaxed. It decides relaxing is better. So when you put pressure down, and now I've noticed an improvement with this. I've been doing it for a few days. Now when I put my finger on the fretboard, it doesn't set off this chain of spasms across my hand. Well, as much. It's getting less and less each day. So that's that. That's sensory motor retraining and constraint-induced movement therapy. These things take a long time. Then going up from that, one thing I might look into, if this doesn't work over the next year, is ultrasound-guided Botox injections of Botox A. There was a study in Singapore of a 38-year-old Chinese classical pianist who had musical dystonia in his left hand, affecting the same fingers as me, but in a different way. When he went to the keyboard, they would curl under like this. And that's a very common one that pianists get. He was given these injections just at the point where the muscle meets with the tendon. Large doses, so much that he was completely paralyzed. He couldn't move these fingers at all. But he was back playing concerts in 30 days. Now you might think, well, why haven't I gone with that? Well, it's not that simple in the UK trying to get this sort of thing done. There is if you're interested, there is a thing called the British Neurotoxin Network. Look that up, which will show you everyone in the UK that's licensed to use Botox. However, trying to find someone that will use it for this purpose with ultrasound guided techniques is really difficult. I can tell you the Wellington Clinic do it in London. However, you need to be examined correctly to show which muscles are under or over firing, so they know exactly where to treat. And you must insist that they use the same dosages as the Singapore study. I haven't been down that route, so I don't know how nice they are about that sort of thing. Then, okay, up from Botox. What was it? Oh, yes. This is where they actually make a small hole in your brain, but they don't actually open up your head. It's known as radiofrequency thalamotomy. So it's been found that if you put lesions, small cuts or hole in the thalamus of the brain in Parkinson's patients and people with essential tremor, which is actually very similar sort of neurological condition, which causes the hand to tremor when you're trying to use it, tremor, not trevor, that can calm it down or stop it completely. But they use radio frequencies to do it so that you can pinpoint a point in the brain to actually do this without actually having to open you up. So it's less invasive. Up from that, still less invasive but very expensive, is ultrasound. No, it's MRI guided focused ultrasound. This is a miracle technology. It's very similar. They put this huge thing around your head. They shave your head. They pinpoint it, and they pinpoint the areas using what's called a functional MRI. Functional MRI is an MRI scan that shows what's happening in the brain at a particular time, the functional areas. And they identify the bits you don't want, and they burn them away with ultrasound, high-pitched sound that actually causes things to heat up. £22,000 if you're interested. Then after that, of course, it is actually a case of boring holes in your skull, maybe removing part of your skull, so they can put electrodes in your brain, which is called deep brain stimulation. I don't recommend that. I really don't want that. They have to leave like a pacemaker thing under your chest, and it'll look like this for the rest of your days. Your skin will have a little lump underneath it where the pacemaker is. People have had all sorts of problems with that. I don't want that. Then from that, it's taking a knife and actually going to the thalamus and actually, I think with a knife, and actually causing these lesions, which means obviously opening up your brain, opening up your skull. So there you go. That's all the treatments that I've been able to find. I'm on the first rung of this: sensory motor retraining and constraint-induced motor therapy, and I have noticed some improvements. Every day, like I think I've mentioned, I put my index finger on the fretboard, following the 2-hour long set of very boring exercises. I sometimes do 4. I just, I'm like that. I'll try and push it. And I've definitely noticed some results. When I put my index finger onto the fretboard, and I'm maybe 4 days in, 4 days in. Normally when I put my finger on the fretboard, this finger shoots up, this knuckle pushes back, and then it goes like that. So I end up with this kind of weird position, and it shoots across over to there. So I can't get across to do scales or any, obviously, melodies of any kind, or any interest. I was playing with 2 fingers for a while, just like Django Reinhardt sort of thing, just to entertain myself while I got better. But I realized that sets it off the other way. If I am playing like this all the time, these fingers dart under and stick under the fretboard. Well, that's a reaction that's unconscious. That's a dystonic reaction. And I don't want my brain thinking that it's a good idea. As I said, there are some thoughts that the brain is trying to do something more efficient by producing this reaction. So I can't actually play at the moment, I can only do these exercises, which is really tough. This is taking a lot of discipline and willpower. Anyway, I'm going to try and keep you posted on what's going on as I go through things. In a few weeks' time, or rather 10 days, 9 days' time, something like that, I'm going up to London for a few days to meet with 3 people. One is a man called Dr. Mark Phillips, who works with BAPAM. That's the British Arts, the British Association of Performing Arts. Performing Artists, no, the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, BAPAM. And I'm going to meet him. He's a hand specialist and a guitarist, and he's going to have a look at me and tell me what he thinks. And we're going to discuss these things that I've been finding out. Then I'm also going to meet a man called David Leisner. Now, David Leisner is a classical guitarist from Canada who cured himself. I think it's Canada. Anyway, he cured himself, and he's got a method that he has been using to train other people to cure themselves. He prefers to perform now. He's not treating people very often, but I'm very lucky that he's actually coming to London, and he's agreed to see me over a course of 4 days. Not cheap, but must be done. So I'm going to learn that technique as well. And then at the end of the week, I'm going to be seeing a man called Dr. Rinzo. Now, he was recommended to me by a Japanese doctor called Takaomi Taura, who was the first in the world to use the MRI-guided ultrasound thing to help someone with focal dystonia, a guitarist, and he cured him. But it's very expensive. So he recommended me to Dr. Rinzo, who works for the NHS. Now, I can't get this treatment on the NHS, but he's bringing a team to discuss what I can do. He has this team-led clinic on, I think it's Wednesdays, and he'll be seeing me about that. Good luck with everything. If you've got focal dystonia, don't lose hope. It is curable. Don't believe anyone who says it isn't. There are loads of videos out there about it, and loads of stuff on the internet. For now, I'm just going to carry on. Bye bye. I've got to go. I've got to go and walk the dog. Bye.